Welcome back to this special collaboration between Power CEOs, the truth behind the business, and AI Today, where Dr. Badeau and myself are deep diving into all things AI literacy. We ended the break talking a little bit about misconceptions and what do we need to think about from a people standpoint, and how do we lead from the front to ensure success. So, Alan, I wanted you to share an example of a company that successfully navigated an AI integration. And let's break down the lessons that everybody watching can learn and take from it so that they can plan their successful AI integration.
Yeah, I would say the easiest example is going to be really any company that's still in existence today that's doing cybersecurity. Because, as we have talked on our shows many times about the convergence of these technologies and the impact that it has on everything else. And cyber is a great example of that, because whether it's your laptop, whether it's your job, whether it's your email, whatever that is, there are so many different influencers and so many different points of entry where, you can get yourself into deep trouble or get your company in deep trouble. And I think, as we saw, like normal, the hackers take advantage of this new capability faster than the good guys. I think we've started to realize that we have to catch up. And, getting, whether it's a hospital that has had their data frozen and they can't use it and they're pretty much not working for the next 2 weeks, or they go to paper, right? Holy cow, you're going to paper. It's the, back to the dark ages, right? I mean, those are some of the things that have been those forces around it. And then you've developed now partnerships, the deep web. It's going out and it's searching the deep web and it's getting so much more information on that, that now you can take all that together and you can actually start to do things and identify trends and patterns that humans cannot do. And well, they can do it, but it'll take them about 100 years. That doesn't do any good if it's hitting today. And AI allows us to do that. And so, you've got your, I'll say this, that even Microsoft and, with the cloud and Azure that they have, and Amazon and the cloud that they have, and federating all of those tools into one place has been a huge saver, especially for small businesses, because they don't have to worry about that as much. So instead of looking at, I've got all these new errors and bugs and vulnerabilities, I'm running things in the cloud now, I can get a lot more done a lot faster, and I don't have to worry about my computer anymore. And so those are just, you're looking at cyber, but the impacts around cyber and everything else is really the driver for a lot of folks. It saves so much time that you can't even imagine as a small business owner now.
Yeah, I hear that. I have seen other areas, and one of the easiest ones to bring forth is something that I've integrated and that I've integrated with many of my clients, and that's, I'm an investor. I go through deals. I'm looking at property deals. I'm looking at business deals. I do acquisitions with my clients as part of their growth strategy. And so I've literally trained AI on my screening process. So now what does that mean? When I get the leads and I get the data, it screens, and I don't even put eyeballs on anything that wouldn't pass my normal screen. Well, normally that would take between 5 and 10 minutes per opportunity, maybe even 15 minutes in the screening process per business we're looking at acquisition. Well, when I get a list of 2,000 businesses, you can do the math. That's a lot of time. Well, I trained the artificial intelligence application to go through my first pass screening and then to my subsequent screening. And now I only lay eyeballs on the ones that I would go into a deeper level of diligence with. So I'm not wasting time building relationships with businesses that will never pass muster. And it saved me tremendous time. And so not only that, it's impacting myself, but I'm now leveraging that with all my clientele. So my clients are having this done faster. They're not having to spend as much on consulting with me, which, I mean, if you're listening to this, you're like, well, wait, you just shot yourself in the foot. They don't have to spend as much consulting hours. No, that's absolutely fantastic, because it means I can increase my volume.
Yep.
I can work with more companies, help more companies to grow faster. And so it becomes more of a volume as opposed to I'm doing all this low value work and screening. It's not low value. It's high
Done.
value, but it's an automatable process. And then the other application that really comes to my mind very rapidly is on the legal discovery process. So many times, what we have now available to us is you can take, and I'm going to use the medical negligence case type because this one we literally just integrated with a client about a month and a half ago. And it's been so tremendous for them because it would take 40, 60, 80 man hours to read these 4,000 page documents, come up with a summary, decide if it's a case, screen for the case, then they pull out what is important and relevant to move forward. And now that can be done in literally minutes.
Yep.
The screening process is done like this, case versus no case, and go. So we're not wasting man hours trying to figure out, is this actually a case that is viable? Do I have a case? So we're not wasting that time up front on something that will never be revenue generating. And then if it is viable, what is the summary and what is important? And it literally pulls out where in the documentation to go. That saves so much time because it frankly takes a lot of time for people to read through all of that documentation and then come up with a summary. So just that collapsed time has improved the top line because now we're screening faster and we're only taking cases that work and we're able to increase volume without increasing staff. And
Yep.
so we've also increased the bottom line because we're not wasting time on leads that will never turn into anything. So those are just two examples, very different industries, very different applications. But the time savings means we can do more volume work, get more revenue in the door, and be more profitable on the other side.
Yeah, and you've heard me say it over and over again, and it gets my hair on fire, is, you know, somebody will say, "Oh, it only takes me 15 or 20 minutes a day to do that." What that's not going to help me very much. Well, when you add that up over a year, it sure does. And, time again is the only resource or currency that you can't get back. And 15 or 20 minutes a day is important. It really is, because that's more time that you can spend with someone doing something with your customer. And, there are examples across every single industry. We see it all the time. This is not a technology that can only be used in certain industries. Everywhere. You just got to look. And folks just, if they pay attention, they look at those sort of things, they will be able to use it somehow.
Yeah, and let me break down, if you're watching, well, how do I determine this? Is this a task or a process that I do regularly? It's done maybe multiple times a day or multiple times a week, and it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever that is. How many times do I do this task over the course of, I like the container of a year. I think that's an easy thing to do the calculation on. And if I no longer had to do that and I have an automation for that, what would I do with that extra time? And put a dollar amount to that. And what I love to do with entrepreneurs, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, is to say, okay, great, what is your time worth? So, okay, if you're working full-time, which by the way, if you're an executive or an entrepreneur, I already know you're working more than 40 hours a week, but just if you're working 40 hours a week, take what it is that you're generating in revenue or salary or whatnot and divide that by your 2080, and that gives you your hourly worth.
Yep.
And then look at the time spent on the process and ask if it's worth that per hour worth for you to be doing that task. And if the answer is no, we need to either automate or delegate it. Well, right now with artificial intelligence, if it's a process that's repeated over and over again, you've got it dialed in. This is an easy automation to do. And it's going to act like it's almost like duplicating yourself. It's almost like duplicating yourself and your process. And it's so incredibly important that we take ourselves through that, but not just as ourselves at the executive level, but also on our teams. What are those daily processes and how much does that process cost? So we want to talk about ROI. I know this because it's going to be a cost. Well, it's going to take a cost to implement AI into your business. Yes, there is a project cost and there is an ongoing cost for implementation. However, how do we figure that out? What is the time worth? What am I saving in that? And look at the difference between the two. And then apply this across all of your processes in your team. If you run a process 100 times a week and it costs you 100 times to run the process, then you know you're spending, what is that? A 1 with 4 zeros behind it, a week in that process. If an AI can do this and now it only costs $25 to run that process, over the course of the week, you're saved 75% of your operational expense. And so
Yep.
that's very clear. Is that an ROI? Yes. What time to ROI? Well, here's my project cost. Here's what I'm saving. It's going to take me 3 months or 6 months to break even. And then everything else is purely improvement in OpEx from there. So
What
it's
do
a
you,
couple of easy ways to think about it.
yeah, and that's exactly right. Agree with you 100%. What do you tell executives, Jen, though, that they say, well, I have to make a decision at the end of this process? How AI is not going to be able to help me make a decision. I can't trust it. I can't trust the AI to do that. What do you tell executives to when they're thinking like that?
Well, the reality is AI is actually really good at distilling information. It's really good at taking information. Now, I'm not talking about open source. I'm talking about if you have something that's trained on your data and your processes and your systems, and you've put the right parameters in place and done everything right, and this is a sound integration, it's going to bring forth better data faster so that you can make a decision with more data than you would have had otherwise. We have to make thousands of decisions every single week. We know that as entrepreneurs and executives. If you're able to have more data points to make that decision, you can make a more informed decision and you make a higher percentage of good decisions very rapidly over time. And so it's about looking at this differently. It's a mindset. If you have to make this decision anyway, what are you spending your time? How are you doing this? And what level of data do you have, as opposed to looking at something that's analyzing every customer you've ever had and making a sales decision or a marketing message decision on that? You want
Yep.
the more data points. And
Yep.
quite frankly, humans can't do it fast enough.
No. And the other thing too is what, everybody says, oh, it's got to be accurate. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be accurate. Yes, it does. We understand that. However, there is a tremendous amount of value in consistency. If you have a service desk, for example, and you've got 40 different people answering calls and they're answering them differently or they're responding differently, your metrics are not going to be very good. With AI, you will get a consistent answer. And it also helps, okay, if it starts to go off the rails a little bit, you know quickly where it's gone off the rails, as opposed to you have one or two folks on your call desk that are just, going rogue and saying whatever they want. That takes more time and more energy, and so consistency is the underlying factor that everybody forgets about.
Yeah, and it's so incredibly important. And we want to know that our data is good. It's not good data if we have things all over the map. And we see this all the time with sales training. I mean, this is one of the number one reasons people integrate, like they engage with me and I help them with their sales training, because they don't even have a process, let alone a
Yeah.
script or anything for their human component. And then when you're able to train an enrollment officer, if you will, out of your AI, and it's doing your process every time, you now have the data of what's working, what's not, when are they leaning back or leaning in, and you can make those tweaks a lot faster. We do have to take a break, but we will be right back after these messages.